Hello everyone and welcome back to Dungeons & Death Battles, the series in which we search for the most lethal monsters in all of Dungeons & Dragons. Today we will be smashing our way through Season 4, in which 16 deadly dungeon denizens, as voted on by you incredible arena patrons, will be battling it out to see which one of them is worthy of taking home the CR4 crown. The arena rules are simple, the monsters start 30 feet apart, there is no fleeing the map, victory is achieved by kill only, and outside influence is not allowed. And today we are once again jumping back into the CR4 quarterfinals with today's dueling denizens, the hemorrhaging Helmed Horror, taking on the powerful Plasmoid Boss to see which of them has what it takes to ascend through to the Season 4 semi-finals. Backstage, mystery continues to surround the Helmed Horror, as it has once again arrived to the arena completely unaccompanied by a team of any sort. It has simply been waiting menacingly, its cold construct mind clearly set on one thing only, and that today will be taking down the Plasmoid Boss. Speaking of which, the boss has rolled up with a full retinue as you would expect, and we would like to take the time to warn you all only to participate in gambling at the right, proper and respectable kobold booths. Other bookies are shady and will be dealt with accordingly. But all that aside, let's compare today's competitors as our glorious kobold stewards prepare the arena for combat. Over in today's blue corner we have the Helmed Horror, a creature that won its quarterfinal spot by utilizing its flight in tandem with its devastating arcane sword, which can dish out a potent 1d8 plus 4 points of slashing damage plus 1d10 points of force damage on a hit. This advanced animated suit also boasts general magic resistance as well as a spell immunity to 3 spells, which in this case will remain as Heat Metal, Lightning Bolt and Magic Missile. The Horror has become well known for its incredibly tough AC of 20 and glides into the arena with a 67 hit point average, as well as immunity to an incredible amount of status conditions with blinded, charmed, deafened, exhaustion, frightened, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned and stunned, all being off the table, as well as complete immunity to necrotic and poison damage, which combine together to make the Helmed Horror one of the most resilient creatures on the CR4 roster. But that does not mean it is in for an easy victory in today's contest by any measure, as the Plasmoid Boss oozes into the red corner, pride and passion willing it on in today's battle, where it will look to prove itself against the conniving construct that it will be facing off against. The Plasmoid Boss is the bulkier of today's contenders with a hit point average of 82, but it does fall down drastically in the defense department, with it only having an 11 AC, nearly half of that of the Helmed Horror. That being said, the boss can use its gelatinous mass to perform an uncanny dodge using a reaction, which halves damage from an attack that hits it, an ability that came in clutch against its previous foe, the Shadow Demon. The boss is also a strong melee fighter, with its multi-attack allowing it to make 3 pseudopod attacks per turn, each which deal 2d6 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage on a connection. On top of all of this, the boss's amorphous form allows it to squeeze through extremely tight spaces and grants it advantage on initiating and breaking free from grapple checks. Now, due to the 2024 rule change as implemented by the High Council, this no longer functions as written on the boss's sheet, so for the purpose of our combat, it will be imposing disadvantage on creatures that must save against its attempts to grapple, as opposed to the boss receiving advantage to initiate. It's the same difference, and sometimes in the arena we must adapt to work with these strange planar inconsistencies. It's also worth noting that the Plasmoid Boss has resistance to acid and poison damage, with proficiencies on its constitution and wisdom saving throws as well. And with all that said, it does look like the teams and our kobold stewards are ready to rumble, which can only mean that it is time to roll for initiative, starting with the Helmed Horror and its +3 modifier. So let's get things underway here in the arena. Yet another CR4 quarterfinal, Helmed Horror rolling in +3 to this. And with a 14 plus 3 for 17, that is a very, very strong start from the construct. But let's see if the Plasmoid Boss can do any better. It does have a +1 to its initiative, but we'll be looking to beat a 17. So Plasmoid Boss rolling in. And with a 6 plus 1 for 7, that does mean that the Helmed Horror has clinched pole position in this quarterfinal bout. And it will be wasting absolutely no time kicking itself off from its starting position and flying over to the Plasmoid Boss. Its 30-foot movement speed easily getting in over there. And then of course it will be striking in with its arcane sword using that multi-attack to make 2 attacks. So rolling in for this first strike, again a +6 to this, looking to be an AC of 11. And that is a 5 plus 6, which will drag that all the way up to 11, which does match the Plasmoid Boss's AC and therefore 4 does connect. And now in response to this, the Plasmoid Boss is going to take its first uncanny dodge reaction, and so whatever this damage is, it will be halved. So now we have 1d8 plus 4 points of slashing damage, plus 1d10 points of force damage, so rolling those in now. And that is not great. That is a 1 there on the d10 for a single point of force damage, with a 4 on the d8 there being a little bit more average, plus 4 to total for 8 points of damage. That 1, of course, bringing that all the way up to a 9, although that uncanny dodge is going to bring that right back down to just 4 points of damage, which will drop the Plasmoid Boss from 82 to 78 hit points. But the Helmed Horror does have a second attack to roll in with, which you will be doing so right now. Once again, a +6, this second arcane sword attack. And that's a little bit better there with a 13 plus 6 for 19. And so once again, 1d8 plus 4 plus 1d10 points of force damage. And again, could have definitely been a lot higher, with that 2 plus 4 for 6, topping it up with that extra 6 there from the force damage for 12 total, which will reduce the Plasmoid Boss further from 78 to 66 hit points. Not a bad round there at all, but that will end the Helmed Horror's turn as we do hand over to the Plasmoid Boss, which does now have a target in its sights. It seems that in this battle, its opponent has come straight to it, and it will be showing it the error of its ways by unleashing its multi-attack, going in for 3 pseudopod attacks. But now it does have the mighty challenge of beating the Helmed Horror's AC of 20, but it too has a +6 to its rolls, so let's see what it could do as the boss begins to dish out some damage. +6, first attack rolling in, and that is a 17, with that 6 bringing that up to 23, so we have a connection immediately. As we roll in 2d6 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage, the boss immediately showing that it means business, and that is a business roll right there as well, with 5 plus 4 for 9, of course being topped up by the +4 modifier to make for 13 points of damage, dropping the horror from 67 to 54 hit points. And we do still have 2 more pseudopods to roll in with. So second coming through, but a 9 plus 6 for 15 is not going to do it. Third strike rolling in. Once again is going to be 15 and is not going to strike true. The Helmed Horror simply batting those last 2 away with its shield as it becomes slightly more aware of the Plasmoid Boss and its strategies. And at this point in time, the Helmed Horror will be feeling comfortable that his armor is doing the job, and it will simply stay put and weigh in once again with 2 more arcane sword attacks as the Duke out in melee well and truly gets underway. Helmed Horror rolling in, and an 8 plus 6 for 14 is gonna do the job. Does once again mean that 1d8 plus 4 points of slashing damage and 1d10 points of force damage will be coming for the Plasmoid. So rolling that in right now. And that is a 3 on the d10, and again, and another 4 on the d8. Those, of course, coming together for 7 points of damage, again, topped up by that +4 modifier for another 11 points of damage. The Plasmoid Boss, of course, once again taking that uncanny dodge to have that down to just 5 points, as it is likely to take that reaction the first time it is hit per round. But that does drop the boss from 66 to 61 hit points, as yet another arcane sword attack strikes in. And a 10 plus 6 for 16, once again, another strike. Let's see if the Helmed Horror can dish out a little bit more damage this time. And it certainly can, rolling in with an 8 there on the d8. Finally some max damage, with that 8 being topped up by that +4 modifier to make for 12 points of damage, plus that 5 there to bring that all the way up to 17 points of damage. A mighty hit indeed by the Helmed Horror. The Plasmoid Boss will certainly have felt that one, as its hit points drop from 61 to 44. The Helmed Horror really holding its own out here, and the Doomguard itself does feel like things are going in the right direction for it, as we do hand over to the Plasmoid Boss. Helmed Horror staying put, but once again opening itself up to that Plasmoid Boss's multi-attack. 3 pseudopod hits swinging in here. First one rolling in, and that is a natural 1, which of course means that that one totally fluffs and completely misses the mark. Rather embarrassing for the boss, I will say, and it does look like the boss's retinue are currently going through the stands, making sure to pay off anybody that saw that, because of course that never happened. And so rolling in for attack number 2. And that is better! That is a complete opposite right here. The boss was clearly just fluffing that first blow, creating a sense of false security in the mind of the Helmed Horror. And now everybody has seen this one. I can see that gold is being packed back into pockets, as it does appear that the boss was simply setting up for something much larger. A natural 20 on that second pseudopod hit. We have a critical, and that does mean we will be rolling in with 4d6 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage. That is more like it. That is the kind of flex that the boss wants to showcase here today. So rolling in now, 4d6 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage on that critical hit. And that is reasonable damage there, with a 2 and a 3 for 5, plus that 5 there for 10, topped up by a maximum 6 for 16 points of damage, of course, plus the modifier of 4 for 20 points of damage from that single critical pseudopod strike, which will be dropping the Helmed Horror from 54 to 34 hit points. What a tremendous impact that was, and the armor will certainly have felt that one. And it hasn't ended just yet, as the boss has another attack to roll in with. Third pseudopod flying in. Let's see what it can do. But a 12 plus 6 would be an otherwise respectable hit, totaling 18. But unfortunately, the Helmed Horror does have an AC of 20, which means that that one unfortunately misses. However, that critical strike was powerful by itself, and will have certainly rocked the Helmed Horror, as we do hand back over once again to its turn, where it will be continuing on with the trend of hacking and slashing away at the Plasmoid Boss, as it seems fairly comfortable that it is still in control of this fight. So Helmed Horror first attack rolling in, and that is an 11, the number on the dice alone securing that strike, with of course that 6 topping that all the way up to a 17. So once again, Helmed Horror rolling in some damage. Plasmoid Boss of course initiating that uncanny dodge. And it's a reasonably good job it did so as well, with a 3 plus that 4 modifier for 7 points of slashing damage, topped up by the 7 points of force damage for 14, which will be halved down to 7 points of damage, as the boss drops from 44 to 37 hit points. But of course, the Helmed Horror, second attack rolling in. And there's another natural one. The Helmed Horror has missed this strike. It does seem that whatever the Plasmoid Boss has been doing has seemed to humble the armor slightly, and it has maybe been slightly shaken from that critical hit, which is understandable. But that does absolutely confirm a miss for the Helmed Horror, and it is starting to think that maybe it doesn't want to be hit by 3 pseudopod attacks per turn, and is going to use 30 feet of its fly speed to get up and out of there, which it is going to be able to do for free, as the Plasmoid Boss used its uncanny dodge reaction to mitigate some of the damage from that first strike, meaning that it will not be able to take an opportunity attack. So the Helmed Horror rises up and out of there as it changes up its strategy, realizing that the Plasmoid Boss is in fact more than a threat than it first thought, which does mean that we will be handing over to the Plasmoid. The Helmed Horror has now put distance between itself and its oozing opponent, and the boss is going to initiate a taunt towards the construct, beckoning it to come down and fight it like a true combatant would, no doubt earning the Plasmoid Boss more notoriety points. But as all this happens, the boss will strategically be holding an action in order to attempt to grapple the Helmed Horror when it makes it within melee range. Its reach, of course, being 10 feet due to its oozy nature. And with that said, that will put a stop to the Plasmoid Boss's turn, as we hand back over to the Helmed Horror once again, which is going to initiate its calculated strategy, swooping in order to make that arcane sword multi-attack. But as it does enter the Plasmoid Boss's melee range, which is 10 feet, the boss will be taking a reaction to unleash its hold action in order to make a grapple attempt against the Helmed Horror. And now this will force the construct to make a DC 14 strength or dexterity saving throw in order to avoid meeting a gloopy fate. And as discussed earlier, the Plasmoid Boss's amorphous trait would have in the previous edition given it advantage on ability checks it makes to initiate or escape a grapple. However, with the planar changes, that does mean that we will be flipping the script slightly and imposing disadvantage upon the Helmed Horror for this strength saving throw. So Helmed Horror rolling in, it does have a +4 to this, again looking to be a DC 14 to avoid the grapple, at disadvantage due to the amorphous trait. And a 4 and a 2, its fate has been sealed on both of the dice there. Of course, that disadvantage 2 only being topped up to a 6 by the +4 modifier does mean that the Helmed Horror now finds itself grappled by the Plasmoid Boss. However, that does not affect the Helmed Horror's attacks, and it will still be weighing in with 2 arcane sword strikes. First one rolling in. And that right there is a 13 plus 6 for 19. Again, another strike. Regardless of whether it's been grappled or not, the Helmed Horror knows what it's doing with that blade. You will once again be rolling in 1d8 plus 4 plus 1d10 points of damage. Not been rolling tremendously well this combat, with that 3 being topped up by the +4 modifier for 7, plus 2 for 9 points of damage. Now, of course, the Plasmoid Boss has used its reaction to initiate that grapple, having held an action previously, which means that it is unable to use Uncanny Dodge this round. So that Arcane Sword will be dealing the full 9 points of damage, which will be dropping the boss from 37 to 28 hit points. But the Helmed Horror is not done quite yet, as it rolls in with its second Arcane Sword attack. And a 14 plus 6 for 20 is once again going to seal the deal. Another strike cutting effortlessly through the Plasmoid Boss and its ooze-like body, as it rolls in once again. dealing a much higher amount of damage this time with a 5 plus 4 for 9, plus an additional 9 for 18 points of damage there. That is a chunky hit from the Helmed Horror, which will be dropping the Plasmoid Boss down to just 10 hit points. The Plasmoid could be in trouble here, but as we do hand over to its turn, we do remember that the Plasmoid has grappled the Helmed Horror and will therefore be able to make its multi-attack. And the Plasmoid is a very interesting creature indeed, as it doesn't necessarily attack with limbs. Its entire body is essentially a limb, which does mean that in this DM's opinion at least, it will still be able to make all 3 of its pseudopod attacks. And so, rolling in, 3 more pseudopod attacks, plus 6 to these. Once again, looking to beat that huge AC of 20 as the Helmed Horror braces itself for onslaught. So, 3 attacks rolling in, plus 6s to these. Number 1 rolling in with a 5 plus 6 for 11, which is not going to cut it. Second one rolling through. That is a 17 though. Of course, bringing that all the way up to 23 does break through the Helmed Horror's defenses, as we drop him once again with 2d6 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage. Rolling that in. And that is a decent strike there once again with a 3 and a 5 for 8, plus that 4, topping that all the way up to 12, which will drop the Helmed Horror from 34 to 22 hit points as the Plasmoid Boss prepares yet another chunk of its body to fire off that 3rd pseudopod, which is incoming as we speak. And now that plus 6 to this. Let's see what the Plasmoid Boss could do. And a 17 again. It really likes this number. Of course, that totaling for 23. Again, punching straight through the Helmed Horror's defenses. Perhaps that grapple has got the construct unsettled. But either way, that does mean that more damage is about to be on the table, with another 2d6 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage firing in. And a 4 and a 2 for 6, plus that 4 is going to top that up to 10 more points of damage, which will drop the Helmed Horror down to 12 hit points. This really has been a blow-for-blow combat, with the Plasmoid Boss, of course, initiating that grapple strategy at an opportune moment. But is it going to be enough as we hand over to the Helmed Horror, which is going to focus in and is going to make 2 more arcane sword attacks? The prize is in its sight, and it wants to put the Plasmoid Boss down once and for all. Helmed Horror, 2 more arcane sword attacks, plus 6s to these. First one rolling in. And that is going to be a 16 plus 6 for 22. An absolute smasher of a hit there, as it simply doubles the AC requirement of the Plasmoid Boss there, as it once again rolls in with that 1d8 plus 4 plus 1d10 points of damage. Let's see what this output's going to be. Plasmoid Boss taking that uncanny dodge reaction, as it is able to this turn. And that is a pitiful 1 there on the d8, which will be dragged up by that 4 modifier for 5 points of damage, plus that 4 points of force damage for 9 points. It's going to be halved down to just 4. One more attack left this round. Can it put an end to the Plasmoid Boss as it finds itself on 6 hit points? Second attack rolling in. This could be a crucial roll for the Helmed Horror. And it has rolled in with a 3, with that 6 only topping it up to a 9, as the Plasmoid Boss is left very thin on the ground as far as hit points are concerned. Helmed Horror just unable to push the button to finish. And with that, we will be handing back over to the Plasmoid Boss. 3 pseudopod attacks to make. Again, looking to beat an AC of 20. The Helmed Horror, 12 hit points remaining. Can it be done right here in this twist of fate? Plasmoid Boss rolling in with its first pseudopod attack. That is a 12 plus 6 for 18. A miss, unfortunately. The second fires in. Desperation increasing as it rolls a 5, 6, topping that up to a mere 11. As the last one blasts across. Can it find a gap in the Helmed Horror's armor? Not with a 10, it can't. With that 6 only bringing that up to a 16, as we once again hand over to the Horror, which is going to continue to chop and slash away. It knows it has to do it this round, but can it deliver? Let's find out. Plus 6 to this. That's a 3 again. A 3 plus 6 for 9. That does miss. Second attack rolling in. And a 17. Finally, we have something that is going to connect. That plus 6 bringing that all the way up to 23. But the Helmed Horror is going to have to do something special here damage-wise. It's not been performing too well this combat, but this could be it right here, as we yet again roll in with 1d8 plus 4 points of slashing damage, plus 1d10 points of force damage. Plasmoid Boss taking the uncanny dodge reaction. But that is a huge hit right there from the Helmed Horror, with a 5 on the d8 being topped up by that 4 for 9, plus the 10 there for 19 points of damage total, which is still, of course, going to be halved and rounded down to make for 9 points of damage, although that is still going to be enough to put an end to the Plasmoid Boss, dropping it to 0 hit points, as the nerve connections seem to falter and fade within its mass, as it sinks down and simply becomes a puddle on the floor of the arena. And the Helmed Horror's boots are going to land and connect with the ground, as it strides towards the exit amidst a mixture of cheers and boos from the crowd, as it makes absolutely no heed to avoid the liquid that has been left behind from the Plasmoid Boss's untimely demise. The Helmed Horror simply leaving the arena as unceremoniously as it entered. But that does, of course, put an end to this exciting melee brawl, and the Helmed Horror will be rising up into the semi-final round, in which it will be taking on the Stegosaurus in a future battle. And I do hope you will join me again next time when the Yuan-Ti Nightmare Speaker takes on the Incubus/Succubus in yet another quarter-final bout, as we continue our search to find the most lethal monster in all of Dungeons & Dragons. And of course, if you did enjoy what you saw today, please consider dropping a like on the video, commenting down below, and subscribing to the channel. There is also a Patreon which will be in use sooner rather than later. Main purpose of that being to run polls to decide on the creatures that enter the arena in each season of combat. There are both free and paid tiers over there, so it'd be cool if you could check that out. But other than that, thank you once again very, very much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon.